I'm going to be talking about building with coils of clay. So these projects are all coiling projects, and a coil is just a long skinny rope of clay that you can use to build a structure with and also make designs. So here's an example of just a little pot. Here's another pot that has an owl sitting on the edge of it. Then, of course, I can't help but think of a snail when I'm making coils. So this can be a garden sculpture, snail, made out of coils. These are all just bisquared, which means they've been fired once and they have not had glazes put on them yet. So they're not colored. This just shows a cat's face that I built out of a coil. Here's that snail again, simpler, put on a leaf, this leaf imprint. We roll the leaf into the clay, cut around it, smooth the edges, pull it off, and you've got a great base for a snail. And a turtle. So those are some small projects I'm going to show you, and then after I'm done with that I'll show you some larger kind of platters and things you can also make using coiling technique. So the first thing really is just, what is a coil? You break off a little bit of your clay. You want it to be nice and moist for this. Make it kind of like a little sausage in your hands. And then you're going to start rolling it out with your fingers. Now, each time you roll, you want to use the tips of your fingers and roll along your whole hand. Use your whole hand back and forth. And it starts getting skinnier. And you move your hands so it stays even all the way across, rather than if you just go one spot, you end up getting it too skinny in one side and too fat on the others. Now, as you see, this coil's gotten pretty big, so I'm going to break it in half and just work with it half at a time until I get it to the thickness I want, evenly all the way along. And I set that aside. I'll roll out several coils at one time, several ropes like this, until you're ready to build with them. I'm going to show you how to start building a little pot like that. So once you've got a few lined up ready to go that are all about the same thickness, across, you can start building. Now this pot has just a flat base that I've cut out of a slab as a starting point. So take a little bit of your clay and roll it flat with your rolling pin so you have a slab. And then you can cut the shape that you want your clay to be. If you want, you could trace a circle, the lid of a jar. You could use your slip jar to trace a circle if you want it perfect, or you can just draw one by hand till you have your flat base. Smooth those edges with your damp sponge, not super wet, damp. And this whole time we're working on our canvas mat, so it will not stick to the table. Now this is your starting point. I am going to scratch my edge here to start building with coils, and I'm going to add some slip. You're not going to do that with each layer because we end up blending the insides all together, and that's the way that helps them stick. Then take one of your coils and just start following the shape, and then going up onto the next level, staying right on top. And then when you end up ending one coil, you pick up the next and blend those two together just a little bit and keep going. This is building the sides of your pot, and you want to try to keep it right on top, straight up and down. Blend them together a little bit. You can keep going pretty high. I'm keeping straight sides on this pot. You can start, if you want, going a little bit out, and blend and pushing out if you want it flared sides to come kind of out, but I like it straight up and down. So then you can keep going as high as you want, except for I would pause. Even if you're going to go higher than that, I would pause right now and do the blending inside. So you see that the outside you see the coils, but the inside it looks pretty smooth, and that's what keeps it all together. So I'm going to take my hand and support the outside, and my finger, often I'll actually use my fingernail at the back of it, and smooth all those coils together on the inside and turn it. Now you want to keep your hand there while you're doing it, so you have something to push against and it doesn't just get out of shape. This is one reason it's nice to use clay that's pretty moist, that hasn't dried out yet very much. You're creating a nice smooth surface inside where all of these little coils are joined together. I find most of the time I like using my fingernail, the back of it. You can get your sponge in there. And then if you want to go higher, keep going at that point and pause every once in a while to smooth all those layers together to blend them. Now what I did on this one is I added a little extra round. These are all just flat, and then I added a little extra coil. So you could create some interesting swirls. So here's, instead of just coiling that on, I'm going to make one of my little snail type shapes. And attach it onto there. Then you could put them all the way around if you wanted the whole top to have those on there, or you could just keep going with your other pattern, make that coil go up and around your one central swirl. Sometimes your mat slips. You can coil on straight on a hard surface, but always make sure you're building on. So I'll start building it on here, and then when I get to that coil, I'm going to go up and around it to incorporate it in. To my structure, like that. Then just keep moving, keep going. So that's a fun way to make a coil pot, where we have coils on the outside and the smooth all blended on the inside so it stays together. Now the turtle, I just basically did the same thing. I made a coil here, and then I smoothed his backside together so they wouldn't come apart during firing, they wouldn't separate. The same with the cat. I made one circular coil and blended the back together, and then just cut out some ears and added some little details onto there. Now, to do something slightly larger with coils using a form, here's an example. This is the back side, where it's kind of like a tray, a little plate, square plate in this instance, all made up of coils. They're flat, and on the back side they're all blended together. And so the way I did that is I used something as a form. In this case it's the square styrofoam tray. But you could use other things. There's also this styrofoam bowl where you fit, you can either fit the coils on the inside of the bowl or over the outside. Now the difference here is if you fit the coils on the inside, they look cool, but remember we're going to be blending these together. So once they're all fitted in here, you blend it together and then you'll actually see the coil decoration on what becomes the outside of your bowl, if that makes sense. If you would like to see the coil decoration on the inside of the bowl, or the inside of the platter in this instance, you want to build on the outside of the form. So for instance, we're going to build on the outside of the styrofoam bowl, and I built on the outside of the mat, or the square tray. So I have pre-made a bunch of coils. They're all the same thickness, doing just what I did before. And I'm going to lay those onto the bowl so they're touching. And following the contours of the bowl. Just lay them all side by side. It's okay if there are a few little gaps. Looks like maybe I should have made some smaller ones. And you don't have to have perfect edges, because it could look cool having some circular shapes like that on your finished bowl. So I'm finding that I want some smaller ones, so I'm going to take that one apart. Add it on smaller. I'll coil it up again real quick. Just some small ones for these edges. One more over here. Then I'm going to start blending. So then what's going to happen, just like I did on my tray, is I'm going to blend all of these coils smooth with my finger on this side so they hang together. And then once it's dry, you can take out your form and you see the coiling marks on the inside. You want to blend them, but you don't want to push so hard that you go all the way through to your form, because then you'll mess up the coil decoration on the other side. So you'll see also there's some little gaps. So I'll just take a little pinch of clay, make a ball, and stick it in those holes just to fill them up. If they're real tiny, they're just going to get filled up as you're blending. And then I'm going to start just dragging my finger across all these coils and smoothing that out. So it becomes one solid piece. But on the other side, you'll still see all that cool coiling spirals inside your bowl. You can pick it up. Remember to keep your hand inside to give it some support. you'll kind of figure out which way to push and pull so you don't push it so much that you lose your design. Sometimes I'm pushing with my thumb, sometimes I'm pulling across those ribs with my index finger, always supporting the inside. Squishing that all together. It feels like I'm ruining all my hard work with coils. But you'll be seeing them all on the inside. As long as you don't press too hard. You're just trying to drag this top surface together. All the way around your piece. And this is exactly what I did on the outer surface of the tray. Just took a few more coils. It was kind of a lot of coils to fill up that tray. Now, I'm going to kind of go quickly. I would go through and spend more time smoothing out all those coils. But then you want to run your finger over this whole surface to make it nice and smooth, and take your sponge. Make it so it's like a unified surface. You might even turn it over, kind of flatten that bottom. Then you're going to let it sit and dry. Don't try to peel it off your form yet, because you'll ruin it. Let it sit and dry. And as this clay starts drying up and firming up, it'll start shrinking slightly, which is okay with this kind of form, because that'll, as this shrinks, you'll still be able to pull this out once it is kind of leather hard, as we say. Like this, where it's still kind of dark color, but it's hard. You can't form it anymore. And then once you pop out that form, you'll see all your cool coiling work. And then we'll just let it sit and dry. Although, as you're bringing these projects back to me to fire, it's safe. The safest way to bring it back is to leave it kind of on that form, so it stays nice and solid all the way home to me. And it doesn't risk cracking, because it can be fragile while it's drying. So you're going to leave it on that form to travel back home to me, or the bowl in this instance. So that is an approach to use for coiling. You've got your coiled pots, little cups or bowls, whatever base shape you want. All our little sculptural creatures, or the bowl and platter, which once were fired and glazed, you can use that for food to serve on. And that is coiling.